Hey everyone, in this video we're going to work through the second story, or the second chapter really, of the Road to Latin textbook. So again, like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, if you want to take a look at this, the site that I'm recommending is my own site, Nova Latin, right? If you follow this link and look for my textbook, you'll see that I have all the stories to Road to Latin there. Some of them I'm adapting to, some are basically the same, but you can find either two things, either the original, right, Road to Latin, which is excellent, or you can find my own textbook where I've taken it and adapted it. Either way, I would recommend checking out Nova Latin just to see what you can find. There's a lot of grammar notes there, a lot of different things that I think will help you on your journey through Latin, so feel free to take a look. Before we dive into this video, though, in chapter 2, the quick version of what you need to know, and again, before we dive into the story, let me backtrack even a little more. I would highly recommend the first thing you do, learn the vocab. It's always step one. Even if you think you should learn the grammar first, I would argue that that's not correct, because you can know all the grammar you want and feel really confident. If you don't know what the words mean, it's really hard to succeed in another language, right? So the first thing you should do is go back and learn all the vocab. Take a look. Again, my website has it all listed there. It would be really helpful for you. But wherever you're studying Road to Latin, start with the vocab. Then you want to make sure that you have a decent understanding of the grammar before you dive into the story. So the quick overview, and again, if you want the full version, check out my site, check out the textbook, and read through all the notes. But the quick version is this. When you're dealing with Latin nouns, you have what we call cases. And a case is just how that noun is being used in a sentence. So far in chapter 1, everything you saw was what we called the nominative case. It was more often than not functioning as the subject of the sentence. Or you could see it with the verb to be and say something like, the girl is happy. Very, very basic, okay? But the general idea of nominative case is that if a noun is doing something, it's gonna have a specific ending. It's gonna be the ending A, or the letter A in this case. That's what we call the nominative case. On the other side now, in chapter 2, you're being introduced to something called the accusative case, which is another way of using a noun. The accusative case is the direct object. And if you're not sure what that means, it just means it's receiving the action. And if you think that's confusing, I get it. That's a little kind of vague. It's a term that we like to use a lot as Latin teachers, but you can kind of narrow it down to be more specific. I'll give you an example. If you said the dog throws the ball, that's different in English than saying the ball throws the dog. Right? I didn't change the words at all. I still use the words the, ball, dog. But by changing the order around, I changed the meaning, right? In Latin, it's not about word order, it's about the ending. So if you're trying to say, I throw the ball, you want to ask yourself, who's throwing the ball? I am. That's my subject. It would be what we call nominative case. In Road to Latin so far, it would mean it ends in an A, right? That's what we've seen so far. Or an AE if it was plural. If I'm saying I throw the ball, throw is my action. What am I throwing? What's the thing being thrown? Is kind of one way to think of it. When we say receiving the action, that's what we mean. In that example sentence, the action is throwing. What's being thrown? The ball. That's called a direct object in English. In Latin, we represent that by using the accusative case, which means our noun will have a slightly different ending. So the nouns you're going to see in this chapter, they're not all going to end in A or AE, which are what we've seen so far, but some are going to end in AM. The AM is the accusative case, and I'll point it out to you as we go. So now that we have that under control, and again, you should read through your textbook, read through my grammar notes, whatever it is you need to feel comfortable with translating the story. Once you feel like you're in that place and you have the vocab, it's time to dive in. So one thing different about this video from my video in chapter 1 is you can see it's color-coded. This is something I like to do a lot in class with all my students. It's something I do on my own website, right, Nova Latin. I think it's really useful. It helps you see the story in a different way, particularly when you're just starting out, and you're trying to learn all these endings. By seeing it visually with a different color to represent when a noun is doing something different, it kind of cues your brain to understand how to translate. So what I mean by that is, moving forward, every time I give you a story and it's a noun, a Latin noun is in red, it means it's nominative case. It's probably the subject of your sentence, right? Or it's going with the verb to be. Again, you could be saying someone is something. It would all be nominative. When it's blue, that's the accusative case. And if you look closely here, you can actually see all the words in red are ending in A, because that's our nominative singular ending that we've seen so far. But Januam, right towards the bottom, is in blue. That's because it ends in an AM. The door is not doing anything. Someone is going to do something to the door. So let's dive in. You have Schola as Schola Romana, right? A schola is a school. So you're saying the school is a Roman school. In the previous chapter, we were dealing with an American school. Now we're dealing with a Schola Romana, right? So the school is a Roman school, or a Roman classroom, you can almost think of. Parva est Schola Romana, sed magna est Schola Americana, right? So it's saying a Roman school, a Schola Romana, is small. Parva est, right? That means it's small. If you did this literally, by the way, your translation, if you took it left to right, word for word, you'd be saying small is school Roman. This is why we don't translate word for word left to right. You want to read the whole thing and hear Parva est Schola Romana. You want to hear that whole chunk and say, okay, it's talking about the Roman school being small, and reorder it in your head because Latin uses a different word. Okay? So it's saying the Roman school, the Roman classroom is small. But the American school, the Schola Americana, is big, magna, right? So that's a difference. You have Schola Romana Januam non habet, quod schola est aperta, right? So you're saying the Roman school, the Schola Romana, does not have non habet, right? It doesn't have a Januam, a door. There's our first direct object, right? Why is direct object the door? It's the thing that the school doesn't have. So in other words, you're saying, what does the Roman school have, or in this case not have? A door. That's what we kind of mean by receiving the action, right? It's also why Januam ends in an AM. Another way to think of it, the door isn't doing anything here, right? So it wouldn't be your subject. So you're saying the Roman school doesn't have a door because, quote, schola est aperta, the school is open. So since it's open, right, you can see in the picture to the right, you're looking at a class of Roman boys. They're in sort of looks like a colonnaded courtyard, right, a peristyle courtyard, if you will. It's open. That makes a lot of sense. If you were a wealthy Roman, you'd probably have a garden in your house with these columns. You're probably not going to a school necessarily. You'd have a tutor come in and teach with you. Or, you might be in a smaller class of boys, depending on where you're going. But the general idea is in a Roman school, you're not going to run into, like a class of 50 kids necessarily. That's what they're trying to show you in this picture. So here's the next part of the story. We have antiqua schola fenestram non habet, quod schola non est tecta. So the antiqua schola, the ancient school, right, or an ancient school, you could say, non habet does not have, remember, non is just the negation. It means habet would mean it has. Non habet means it doesn't have. It doesn't have a fenestram. There's our direct object again. What doesn't it have? A window. It ends in an AM because it's accusative case or the direct object. So the ancient school doesn't have a window because the school, schola, non est tecta, right? The school is not enclosed. Tecta means like closed in, right? So it's saying it's not closed in, so it doesn't have a window, right? Because why would you need a window if you're not enclosed, okay? Antiqua schola mensam non habet. So an ancient school, antiqua schola, does not have non habet a mensa, a table, right? Or a desk, you might think. So it's trying to say that, and you can see it in the picture, the kids aren't sitting at desks. The teacher's not standing at a desk. You can imagine that if you were a, ancient Roman boy and you're being educated and you have your tutor, whoever's teaching you, you're not necessarily in a classroom. You're out in the air, right? Moving around or sitting in this case, but there's no desk, no table or mensa in this photo. Okay. Then you have Schola Americana mensa magnam habet. So an American school has habet a mensa magnum, right? Here's my direct object. A table, a mensam, but it's a magnum mensam, a big table. So an American school has a big table, right, or a big desk. And I think what they were trying to get at here, the authors, is the idea of desks, maybe a teacher's desk. It's a little hard. Again, this book was written in the 1930s. I'm not an expert. Maybe everyone sat around one table, which would be kind of cool, but not really what we do today. But again, it's getting at the idea of desks, almost in the plural, you can imagine. But either way, it's trying to show you the difference so far between a Roman school or an ancient school and an American school, right? An American school is closed in, has doors, windows. A Roman school is outside. That's really what they're getting at. Now we have Schola Antiqua Magistram Americanam Delectat. So my subject is the Schola Antiqua. They both end in A. That's the nominative subject. So the ancient school, what does it do? Delectat. It delights. Who does it delight? We need a direct object, right? So the answer is the Magistram Americanum, the American teacher, right? So it's saying the ancient school delights the American teacher, meaning that she's a really big fan of it, okay? In this phrase, or in this sentence rather, the American teacher is not doing anything, right? She's not delighting anyone. She's being delighted by the school is one way to think of it. So this is where you're getting into that subject versus direct object idea. And you can tell how you're supposed to translate this by looking at the endings. It always guides you in the right direction in Latin. So start with your subject, Schola Antiqua, go to your verb, delectat, right? So the ancient school delights, and then look for your direct object, the Magistrum Americanum, right? The American teacher. Then you have Schola Romana, Juliam et Corneliam delectat. So the Roman school, the Schola Romana, delights, again, delectat. Who does it delight? Julia and Cornelia, right? Juliam et Corneliam. So it's talking about how ancient schools really delight the American teacher, but Roman schools delight these two girls, right? Julia and Cornelia, right? Learning about them. So they're delighted by the Roman schools too. Then you have a question here, and it says cur, which means why. Cur Schola Antiqua Magistrum Americanum delectat, right? So why, which makes sense because we have a question mark, right? So why does the Schola Antiqua, the ancient school, delectat, delight the American teacher, right? The Magistrum Americanum. So it's saying, why does it delight her? Schola, and it answers its own question, right? Schola Antiqua Magistrum Americanum delectat quod schola est aperta, right? So again, a little longer sentence at the end, but just take it one piece at a time. My subject, you can tell by the A ending, is Schola Antiqua, the ancient school. What is it doing? Delectat. There's my verb, right? It ends in a T, just means he, she, it is delighting. In this case, the school is delighting. So the ancient school delights. Who does it delight? We need a direct object, the Magistrum Americanum, the American teacher. So you're saying the ancient school delights the American teacher because, quote, schola est aperta. The school is open, right? Meaning wide open. It's the aperta would be the antonym, right? The opposite of tecta, enclosed. So it's talking about how this American teacher really wishes she was teaching in a Schola Antiqua because it's wide open. Honestly, it sounds like a bunch of fun, right? Most of us teachers always try to get outside when we can. So that's what it's getting at, right? The idea of an open classroom versus an enclosed one, okay? But for this, hopefully you understood the story without too many hiccups, so you feel pretty confident in it. The thing to remember is always learn the vocab and then dive into the grammar. What does a nominative case noun look like? What is a direct object, and what do they look like in Latin? If you want help with that, take a look at my textbook. I'd recommend it again. Go to the Nova Latin site. You can find my textbook there. I'll put a link even in the description of this video below to help you find it. But I've given you all my notes, right? Road to Latin and Helen Chesnutt, they do a great job of providing discussion questions, which will get you moving in the right direction. I've supplemented those with my own notes, some extra things that they didn't quite cover in this. So I like to dive into verb endings here too. I would recommend you take a look, and if you combine all that vocab and the grammar notes and the practice, all that, you should feel like you're in a pretty good place when it comes to translating this. And before you leave the story alone, I always say you want to find someone, whoever you can, classmate, whoever, someone you can read this story to practice your pronunciation. And if you're struggling with it, I have other videos on my channel where I walk you through how to pronounce Latin syllables and the different sounds we need for Latin. I'm by no means an expert, but at least it'll get you in the right place. So start there if you need it, but always practice your pronunciation. And if you have someone in class who can read the story back to you, that's a bonus, right? It'll help you with your listening skills too, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to speak and listen and use all your different learning abilities and senses to understand this language. Don't cut yourself off by just reading and translating in your head. Bring it to life. Speak it, listen to it, and have fun as you go. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments below. Otherwise, just keep working on this. If you get stuck, go back, watch the video, do what you have to do, and just make sure that you feel really confident with this. Good luck, and again, let me know if you have any questions.